The new Snes, NES and Sega Mini systems from China are coming. It's time for a message from the future. Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. So in this video we are going to talk about the new NES, Snes and Sega Mini classics from our friends from China. In the last couple of years I did quite some different reviews and I reviewed a lot of shitty products. So in 2020 we're having new models, surprise surprise. So let's begin with the Sega Mini Classic 2020 model, and there are quite some new features to this device. In the previous models I did show a lot of different models. I think I have 3 or 4 of these Sega Mini Classics and they were all flawed in many ways. If it not was the emulation, it was the shitty AV out support. I was not a big fan of it because most of the time, not because of the AV out, but it was problem with the old versions that we didn't have the option for HDMI and the signal was pretty poor in general, so we can't even have a very good upscaled signal. With the new version we're having HDMI and also the possibility to add new games, and as you can see we have quite some different versions over here, so they are pretty damn naughty. But we're going to get our 2 different controllers, 6 button pads, but I don't know if they are the same quality because nothing beats the real deal in my opinion. So these China, let's say, controllers will all be played a little bit differently than the original versions. Okay, so but the main problem with the Sega Mega Drive clones is that we have poor emulation. So the sound is off or it has a washed out image. There are many serious issues with these clones that I've reviewed in the past. So I'm very curious. Okay, they are saying this thing is 1080p, so that is a new one, because if we had let's say an HDMI version, it was never 1080p, or we're having the problem that it has a mono signal out. Yep. How can you mess it up? You can mess it up big time. So that's the question, of course, what are we going to get with this, and that's the reason I want to review it here on the channel. And just wanted to show you, I just wanted to know for myself, is this thing has a decent emulation like the original hardware, or is this just a shitty product like always? How does the menu look and how does the add a game function work? Very curious about it. We can't play original games, so sadly I really love to see this in the future, if these Chinese clone versions that we can play original games and we can basically add games like the ad games. Okay, let's take a close look at the other products, because we have a lot of different products here in this video that we're going to talk about. So let's talk about the NES Classic clone. If they made a clone of something, it's the NES Mini Classic. They made so many versions that I made a freaking separate playlist of this device, because it was just in jungle. Like Pandora's Box, for example, there were so many versions out there that it was not funny anymore. And if you're looking at the NES clones, I can tell you there are a lot of shitty versions out there. Most of them, the first generation, like the 501, 601, all have AV out, horrible controls. But what is also very strange with these, let's say, NES clone systems, that the emulation is pretty poor sometimes. Even for 8-bit, they seems to be messing it up. So this thing is completely different. They are saying it has 700 games built in, so this is the biggest collection yet. And we also have the possibility to use a TF card so we can add new games. So this is a pretty sick version. We're having the old school connection, so we don't have the, let's say, the old school Wii connection. It is just an original system, more like a China fake clone shell in combination with the Chinese controllers. Also very curious how the controllers are playing, because some of these clones had pretty decent controllers. I'm always personally very happy to say they're giving us the turbo controllers, because I think it's a little bit cool to cheat and to play with the turbo controllers. As you can see here, we're having a Famicom shell and it looks pretty decent. It's not a one-on-one clone of the NES Classic Mini, but they did some effort making it more like an entertainment system China edition. So very curious how the emulation goes with this and what is of course inside, how the controller is playing. The cables look a little bit flimsy, but I think for the money we can't complain. And finally we're having HDMI, and that is something that is pretty damn awesome. Because an AV out function, oh man, they keep releasing those things with AV out. I freaking hate it. But in 2020 they are going to all out with this NES, Snes and Sega Mini clone stuff, because they are going to bring this to the next level. Even the Super NES is going to get a revision, and we're going to get, let's say, 100 built-in games, including a CF option or a TF option. We can now add games. At first thinking, why couldn't you do this in the first place? I have reviewed so many horrible Famicom clones, and they are all flawed in many ways, with poor emulation, support of non-adding games, you name it, they messed it up every single time. They do use the original controller ports, but I'm not surprised if the controls are not working from your original system, because I already tried with previous models and they all had the same problem, that the original controls wasn't working. Don't get me wrong, the controller ports just fit perfectly with the original controllers, but there was something in the inside that refuses to accept the original controllers. Bringing us to the controllers, and I can tell you, for the Super Famicom versions, I have never seen a perfect clone controller. And I'm talking about not the ones you can buy separately, I'm just talking about the stuff that you're going to get with these systems. Most had so horrible D-pads that it was, let's say, most of the games are just unplayable. So that is a little bit of a sad story about these Super Famicom clones, and I'm very curious, what are we going to get with this version? That is something we need to see in the future. For now, this is what I know of and what we are going to get. So if you're looking at the price of the 3 clone systems, we are basically done with the cheap stuff that we're going to get for $20. There is no cheap solution out there. If you want to have, let's say, more like a premium versions, or this is how they are selling it to me, you shall need to pay more, and we're going to talk about $50 up to $60 for a fake system. So this is what we're going to need to pay for, but we're going to get an TF option, we're going to have HDMI, all the stuff we're asking for the last couple of years, and I'm very curious what we're going to get. My question to you is, what do you think of these clone systems? Are you waiting for 2020 for bringing us more of these shitty clones, or maybe they are decent enough that we can enjoy them? Or are you thinking, I just want to stick it with the original hardware? So yeah, let me know in the comments. I want to thank you for watching. Consider subscribing, become one of the Wicked family, and I will see you in the next video.